All right, let's jump right in. We're about to take a look inside one of the most, well, secretive and isolated nations on the entire planet. This is a place that literally plays by its own rule book. Okay, so picture this. You walk into a barber shop, right? But instead of a style book with tons of options, you get a chart. A government-approved chart with exactly 28 haircuts for men to choose from. That's it. And for unmarried women, your hair has to be short. I know it sounds absolutely wild, but this isn't a hypothetical. It's a real state-mandated rule. And get this. What about voting? Well, imagine it's election day. You have to vote. It's the law. But when you get your ballot, there's just one name on it. One. There's no choice, no one to vote against. And if you don't show up to vote, that's seen as treason. So you see, it's not really about picking a leader. It's about proving you're loyal. And that's the thing. These crazy scenarios, they're not just what-ifs. For 26 million people living in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, yeah, the DPRK, this is just life. This is their everyday reality, a world built on a set of rules that, honestly, are hard for most of us to even wrap our heads around. And if you want to know just how different their reality is, you've got to hear this. It's not even the same year there. Seriously, North Korea runs on its own calendar, the Juche calendar. It doesn't start at year one, it starts in 1912, the year their founder, Kim Il-sung, was born. So right now, for them, it's officially the year 113. That one little fact tells you so much. It's a country that's literally created its own timeline. So how in the world does a country get to this point? To really get it, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to look at the ideologies that were used to build this nation right from the very start. Okay, so let's do a super quick history lesson. After World War II, Korea was split right down the middle. You had the North, backed by the Soviets, which became the DPRK with Kim Il-sung in charge, and then the South, backed by the US. This whole thing exploded into a devastating war that basically ended in a tie. And this is the really important part. They never signed a peace treaty, just an armistice, which is basically a timeout. So technically, they're still at war, even today. So if you're a country that's always, technically, at war, how do you keep things running? Well, you come up with a really powerful idea. And for North Korea, that idea is Juche. It basically means self-reliance. You can think of it as the country's main operating system. It's the core belief that says North Korea has to stand completely on its own, politically, economically, militarily. It's the whole reason for their intense isolation. And that leads us right into the next piece of the puzzle, Songin, which means military first. See, if Juche's the why they're so isolated, Songin is the how. This policy says the military, the Korean People's Army, comes first. Always. They get the best food, the most money, the final word on everything. It's why this small, pretty poor country has one of the biggest armies on the planet. Okay, so we've got these big state ideas, but how do you make that personal? How do you get millions of people to not just follow, but to worship the leaders? Well, that's where the cult of personality comes in. This is where things get, well, pretty unique. The founder, Kim Il-sung, he actually died back in 1994. But here's the thing. Officially, he's still the president. He's called the Eternal President. This makes North Korea the world's only necrocracy, a country literally ruled by a dead person. It's wild. His son and grandson, they just rule in his place. And this isn't just some abstract concept. It's drilled into daily life with a bunch of super strict rules. For example, every single home, every public building has to have portraits of the first two leaders, and they have to be perfectly clean. Or, get this, you can't fold a newspaper in a way that creases a picture of a leader's face. That's a crime. Oh, and if you take a picture of one of their statues, you have to get the whole thing in the frame. You can't just, crop out their feet. These little things make sure that reverence is a constant, active part of life. All right, so you've got the big idea. You've got leaders who are treated like gods. But how do you make sure 26 million people stay in line? How do you enforce all of this? You do it by building a system of total, inescapable control. Look at this number, 28. What is that? A street number? Somebody's age? No. This number is the key to understanding how they control information in North Korea. 28 is roughly the total number of websites you can access on their national internet.
Let's really put that into perspective for a second. We have billions of websites, right? An entire universe of information at our fingertips. North Koreans, they have what's called Pyongyang. It's like a tiny, walled garden. It's not connected to the global internet at all. Every single thing on it is approved by the state. There's no Google, no YouTube, no social media. Information isn't something you can just go find. It's something the state gives you.
But controlling what you see and read is only half the battle. The state also controls your entire life's path from the second you're born, and they do it with a system called songbon. It's basically a social class system, but it's not based on money. It's based on how politically loyal your family was, going back 3 generations. It's not about you, it's about your grandparents.
So Songbun basically splits everyone into 3 groups. First, you have the core class. These are the elites, the descendants of people who were super loyal to Kim Il-sung. They get everything, the best schools, the best jobs, they get to live in the capital city, Pyongyang. Then there's the wavering class. This is most people, just ordinary citizens with pretty limited options. And then you have the hostile class. If your great-grandpa was a landowner or a Christian or had any family in South Korea, you're basically blacklisted for life. You get the worst jobs, you're watched constantly.
And what really locks this whole system in place is the 3-generation punishment rule. This quote here says it all. If you commit a political crime, you don't just go to a prison camp alone. Your parents go with you, and your children go with you. Your whole family line is punished. It's designed to make the very thought of stepping out of line absolutely terrifying.
And on top of that massive social structure, your daily life is just micromanaged. You can't wear blue jeans. They see them as a symbol of American imperialism. We already talked about the 28 state-approved haircuts for men. If you want to go to the next town over to visit family, you need an official government permit. And every single week, everyone has to go to these self-criticism sessions where you literally confess your ideological failings in front of your peers. It's total psychological control.
So you have to wonder, why all this? Why go to such insane lengths? Well, from their point of view, it's all about defense. They see themselves as a fortress that has to be defended at all costs from an evil outside world that wants to tear it down.
And this is where that military-first idea really comes into focus. Just look at the numbers. Even though North Korea only has about 26 million people, they have the 4th largest active military in the world. We're talking almost 1.3 million soldiers. That means roughly 1 out of every 25 people in the country is in the army.
But this chart, this one on spending, tells an even bigger story. It's estimated that North Korea spends up to 1/3 of its entire national income on the military. 1/3! Just look at the comparison to other countries. It's not even close. This is what Songbun looks like on a spreadsheet. The army gets fed first, and everyone else gets what's left.
So when you put it all together, you can really see the structure. You have the core ideology of self-reliance. You have the godlike leaders that everyone has to worship. And you have this airtight system of total control. Those 3 pillars work together to create a completely isolated reality for 26 million people.
And that really leaves us with one big question. We live in an age of nonstop connection, right? The internet, global travel, instant communication. In a world like that, how long can a nation built on total, absolute isolation actually survive? It's managed to defy the odds so far, but you have to wonder what the future holds.
All right, today we're going to try and peer inside one of the most secretive and, let's be honest, fascinating nations on the planet, North Korea. It's a place that really operates in its own reality, with a set of rules that can seem just completely unbelievable to the rest of us. So let's just dive right in with a question that kind of gets to the heart of it.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. You wake up, decide you need a haircut, but you don't get to pick any style you want. Nope. You get a state-approved chart. If you're a man, you have 28 choices. If you're an unmarried woman, your hair has to be short. Now, this isn't just some weird, quirky fact. It's actually our way into understanding a society where personal choice is a totally different concept.
And believe me, the control goes so much deeper. I mean, some of the rules of daily life are just shocking. If you commit a serious political crime, it's not just you who gets punished, it's your family for 3 generations. Thinking about wearing blue jeans? Forget it. They're banned as a symbol of American imperialism. And information? It's controlled so tightly that even folding a newspaper the wrong way, creasing the leader's image, is an actual crime. So all of this begs one huge question. Why? Why is it like this?
To get to that why, we have to understand that these aren't just random quirky laws. They're all part of a very carefully built system. A system that's designed to control every single part of a person's life, starting with the one thing everybody can see, how you look.
So you see the specific rules here, but it's the reason behind them that's so important. Banning things like dyed hair or blue jeans, that's not really about fashion. It's a tactic to prevent what the state calls ideological contamination. It's about building a wall, not just at the border, but inside your head, to cut you off from any hint of Western culture. And this control doesn't stop with your appearance.
Not even close. The state can demand your time, your labor, whenever it wants. Sometimes people are forced into these things called working challenges that can go on for 70 days straight. No breaks. It's a system where there's just very, very little space for you to be an individual.
Okay, so if those are the rules on the surface, what's the system holding it all together underneath? To really understand the why, we have to look at the actual architecture of control that the whole society is built on. And at the absolute core of North Korean society is this idea called songbun. Think of it like a social class system, but it's got nothing to do with how much money you have. It's all about one thing: political loyalty. And the wildest part? It's hereditary. Your songbun decides everything for you: where you can live, the job you'll have, even if you're allowed to go to a university. The whole system is basically split into 3 buckets. You've got the core class at the top, the elite. They get the best jobs, the best housing, all the perks. Then there's the wavering class, which is most people. They live pretty average lives but are always being watched. And then there's the hostile class at the bottom. If your great-grandfather was a landowner or had a relative in South Korea, you're basically branded as an enemy for life. Your fate is sealed by who you're related to.
Okay, look at this number again, 28. We saw it with the haircuts, right? Well, it turns out that number represents something else too, something way bigger when it comes to the architecture of control.
That's right. For pretty much everyone in North Korea, the internet is made up of just 28 websites. It's not the internet we know. It's a completely sealed-off national internet called Pyongyang. Every bit of content is approved by the state. Foreign radio signals are jammed. Foreign movies are illegal. It's an information blockade designed to make sure the government story is the only story you ever hear.
So, you've got this social sorting system. You've got this information bubble. What's it all for? Well, all these layers of control serve one single purpose: to prop up the state's central belief system, which is this massive, all-consuming cult of personality built around the ruling Kim family.
And this quote really says it all. North Korea is sometimes called the world's only necrocracy, and that means a government that's literally ruled by a dead person. The founder, Kim Il-sung, passed away back in 1994, but he is still, in the Constitution, the country's eternal president. That just shows you how central he and his family are to the entire identity of the nation. This devotion is so absolute, they even have their own calendar. We count years from the birth of Jesus Christ. Well, the Juche calendar starts in 1912, the year Kim Il-sung was born. So while we see the year as 2026, for them it's Juche 115. They've literally remade time to revolve around their leader.
And the official state ideology that justifies all this is called Juche. Now, on paper, it's about self-reliance and the Korean people being masters of their own destiny. But in practice, what it really means is that the nation has to be totally isolated from the outside world, and that the most important virtue of all is absolute, unquestioning loyalty to the leader.
But where did this intense, overwhelming need for control and self-reliance even come from? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the country's birth and a war that, technically, never ended.
So, after World War II, Korea was split right down the middle. You had the North backed by the Soviets and the South backed by the US. Then in 1950, war breaks out. It was absolutely devastating. But here's the most important part. The war didn't end with a peace treaty. It ended with an armistice, which is just a ceasefire. So technically, the two Koreas are still at war right now.
And this constant, unending state of war is the reason used to justify everything, all the sacrifice, all the control. Which brings us to this mind-boggling number, 1.28 million. That is the number of active soldiers in the North Korean army. That makes it one of the largest militaries in the entire world. This is the result of a policy called Sungun, which basically means military first. The military comes before everything else, before the economy, before food, before the people. The constant threat of war is the ultimate justification for total state control.
So, when you start stacking all of these layers together, you have the strict daily rules, the deep systems of social control, the information lockdown, the all-powerful ideology, and this idea of a never-ending war, you start to get a picture of how this incredibly unique and isolated society actually works.
Maybe nothing captures the reality of North Korea's isolation better than that famous satellite photo of the Korean peninsula at night. You see South Korea just a blaze of light, connected, buzzing with energy, and then you look north and it's just a sea of darkness, with one tiny pinprick of light in the capital, Pyongyang. It's such a powerful metaphor for a country that is almost completely unplugged from the rest of the world.
So what's the big takeaway here?
We started with a weird rule about haircuts, and we ended up here. This is how it all fits together. You start with extreme rules to control everyday life. You reinforce that with a social sorting system, the songbun, that decides your destiny from birth. You keep everyone in line with an information blockade. You focus all their energy on leader worship. And you justify the whole thing by maintaining a constant threat of war. It's a complete system, from the smallest detail to the biggest idea.
And at the end of the day, it leaves us with this one final, really mind-bending question. In a world like ours, a world of total information and connectivity, how on earth does one country manage to remain a secret? It's a question that really shows you just how powerful these systems of control can be. Thanks for digging into this with me.